Welcome to Bloody Besties, your true crime podcast with best friends who have known each other since elementary school. We are your hosts, forensic scientist Ruby Wild, presenting little known cases to
me, Melissa May, the daughter of police officers and true crime addict, who will be the one to bring you fun facts about our episode. So sit back, relax. Just kidding. Stay sharp, buckle up. We hope you enjoy the ride.
So I have never been to this country. Have you?
I have not.
And what country are we talking about?
Argentina.
Hit me with that fun fact.
The largest one of these was discovered in Argentina.
Is it that Jesus thingy? No, that's Brazil. Hang on.
Huh.
Diamond? No. Wait, let me try one more. Discovered gold mines.
Fossil.
Oh,
Fossils of the largest known dinosaur were found in Argentina's vast expansions. It holds the fossilized remains of the largest dinosaur ever discovered on Earth. They were first discovered by a farm worker.
Oh.
It took the paleontologists 3 years to uncover the fossils of this one dinosaur.
What kind of I can't say that word. What kind of dinosaur?
The dinosaur discovered was a Patagotitan mayorum.
I like that name.
And I have to say Titan.
I mean, of course. Let's go Titans.
Go Titans.
Sorry. Okay. We have to preface. Was that? No, that was your second Titans game. Yeah.
Third.
I can't remember, but we were at a Titans game. It was a season opener.
We had the best seats.
They were. And we sat next to the cutest little girl in a little Titans cheerleading outfit. And she would scream, "Go Titans."
And it was the hottest day in Nashville since 1980 something.
Yeah.
And we were there sweating, using the free gift, which was a flag, as shade.
It was insane. But
go Titans. And every time we would just laugh. So when this dinosaur name came up, I was like, Patago Titan.
I mean, of course. Let's go Titans.
Patago Titan mayorum.
I love it.
So this type of dinosaur was believed to be a plant eater.
Okay. A vegisaur.
A vegisaur. So he's the kind that had the really long neck.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he was living near the end of the Jurassic period. The adults were about 120 feet long and weighed 125,663 pounds. Or if you can picture 14 elephants.
Wow.
It's a big boy.
Oh, big boy. Wow. Okay.
And my hairdresser's from Argentina.
Oh. My hairdresser's from the same mom.
Nice.
It's my sister. All right. That's going to be the last good bit we have for a while because it involves kids. We'll try to stay away from the kids ones because they really bother me.
Yeah.
But this one, it's intriguing because it set a precedence in the forensic community. Okay. We're on June 19th, 1892, in Necochea, Argentina, near Buenos Aires, with Francesca Rojas, 27, went to her neighbor yelling that the local man, Pedro Ramon Velasquez, killed her children. Francisca had a superficial wound to her throat, but it was not so bad that she needed medical attention immediately. She ran with the neighbor back to her hut, and at the same time, the neighbor sent his son to go get the police. So the two adults are running back to the hut with the kids. Son's going to get the police. And when Francesca and her neighbor arrived, they saw that the kids, Ponciano Carbala, who was 6, and his sister Felicia, who was 4, both had severe head wounds, and they were indeed dead. There was no obvious or visible weapon in sight, and together they waited for the police to arrive. The chief of police arrived at Francesca's home, and after only glancing at the crime scene, he left to go question Pedro because Francesca kept claiming that he was the murderer. Pedro was a man who worked at a nearby ranch, and he had been trying to get in Francesca's pants. There's no politer way to say that. She stated that he was in love with her, but she didn't reciprocate his feelings. And after the latest rejection, he left only to return later that night to kill her children. Francesca told the chief that she saw him running away as she arrived home. Pedro did not deny the fight, but he did deny the murder. The police had interrogating technique that was traumatizing to say the least. They bound him up and lay him between the bodies of the two children overnight, hoping this would have him confess.
Wow. That's like they say if a dog kills a chicken, they tie the dead chicken to the dog's neck.
That's
I've never
horrible.
done that, or I don't know how that works, but that sounds kind of like what they did to him.
That is horrible.
The dog's supposed to just lug around this dead chicken.
No, that sounds no, that's animal abuse. I'm sorry. No,
I don't get it.
absolutely not. And just like what they did to him, no, that's abuse. That's no. I
Yeah.
no. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm.
And you're contaminating the crime scene for sure.
I mean, at the very least, it is 1892, but still,
Did you say the date?
yeah. So yeah, we're
1800s of it all.
1892, and it didn't work. Like he stayed bound between the children overnight, still didn't confess. They decided to torture him for a week of torture. The police chief decided nothing would make him confess because even after a week, he still wouldn't. We literally were just talking about, like, oh, you torture somebody enough, they'll tell you anything that they want. Apparently not, because he was not giving in. And so they decided to go a different route and started their actual investigation now. You know, police started learning through talk around town that Francesca did have a young lover already, and that might be why she was refusing to be with Pedro. Possibly. They also heard that this young man had told Francesca that he would marry her if she didn't have children.
Oh,
hmm Francesca's lover was ruled out because he had an alibi. Never found out his name. And I guess it's not important to the story because I found out all this information, but not his name. After learning this, they decided to call in reinforcements. Enter Buenos Aires police analyst Juan de Bucetic, Bucetic, a Croatian born pioneer in fingerprint analysis for forensics. He had moved to Argentina in 1884 and was working for the Statistical Bureau of La Plata Police Department. He was working to expand upon France's Galton method of single fingerprint database. Um, quick little primer. So, the Galton method is to include all 10 fingers for the classification of fingerprint patterns. So he agreed that you needed 10 prints instead of just a couple, which was the previous method. And that was to make it more in depth. And it also included like the three major characteristics, which is the arch, the whirl, and the loop. So there's a whole bunch of subcategories in there too. And I only learned this recently, and I'm ashamed that I only learned it recently.
well, you didn't have to do that part.
I didn't have to do fingerprints until recently,
Yeah.
but what do you call this finger?
A pinky.
But it's not. It's called the little finger.
That's so basic.
Uh-huh. You have your thumb, your pointer, your middle finger, ring finger, and little finger.
Little
It's
finger.
not a pinky. Isn't that weird?
Where did pinky come from?
I have no idea. Now I need to know the etymology of that. Etymology of pinky finger. But I did just learn that. Now, one, the forensic fingerprint analyst was not impressed with the way that police had been handling the case of the murdered children. And he was the one that discovered that Pedro had an airtight alibi for the murders, which is why he wasn't confessing.
The word pinky comes from the Dutch word pinkje, which means little finger. The word was first used in Scotland in 1808 and is now common in American and Scottish English, as well as other.
Okay. Thank you for my fun fact. Two. I get two for this episode. Back to Juan, he was not impressed with the way that police had been handling the case of the murdered children. He was the one that discovered that Pedro had an airtight alibi for the murders because he had been out drinking with friends. So All police had to do was just look into that, but
Mhm.
they didn't. What I have not mentioned until now was that Pedro didn't exactly have a high IQ. We're
Okay.
going to say that. And therefore, he didn't know that telling the police of his alibi, that it would have helped him.
Right.
Like, that's the mentality that he had. So this left only Francesca and Juan's sights. He went back to the scene of the murders and noticed a stain in what appeared to be blood that had been overlooked by police and most likely by Francesca herself because the mark was on the bedroom door where the children were murdered. And this stain was an impression from a fingerprint. He returned to the police station and had Francesca brought in, and he took her fingerprint impressions. Her thumb matched the print on the door. And why is this so important? Francesca had stated that she had never touched the kids and therefore would not have been able to leave a bloody fingerprint on the door where it had been found. Now, I didn't find any documentation that they used to determine whether or not it was blood, and they wouldn't have had the means to document the blood type because that wasn't established until 1901. But it was enough for her because when confronted with this evidence, she folded, stating that she was the one who killed her kids and injured herself in an attempt to deflect attention. That's why she had the wound on her throat in order to marry her lover. She was sentenced to life in prison, and I couldn't find death day or anything of what happened to her, Pedro, or her lover. Our case is not only going to be 11 minutes long or however long it is after editing. It's not that short of a case, so I'm going to give you one more. We have Thomas Farrow, who was 70, and his wife, Anne, 65. They lived above a paint shop and they managed, called Chapman's Oil and Color Shop in Deptford, South London, England. The elderly couple were well liked, and therefore it was noticed when the store did not open on March 27th, 1905. The paint store was owned by George Chapman, so his assistant, Lewis Kidman, and an employee, William Jones, 16, went to check on the couple. They forced their way into the store, and it was there that they found Thomas first. He had been bludgeoned in his head, and he was lying in a pool of his own blood. They were then on the hunt for Anne, and they found her upstairs in their bed, having been beaten as well. But she was hanging on. They went for help. She was able to hang on for 4 more days until she succumbed to her injuries, dying without ever regaining consciousness. Thomas's autopsy showed that he had been hit 6 times in the head with a blunt instrument, and the blunt instrument actually had two shapes, a circle and a triangle. His skull was fractured and his brain had hemorrhaged. Anne's autopsy showed similar wounds, indicating that they had both been killed with the same blunt force instrument that was unknown length and most likely 1 to 2 inches in width. Why was this couple murdered? Searching the scene, it was noted that the cash box was empty and its liner had been left in the bedroom. There were no signs of forced entry, but the motive was most certainly robbery. Every Monday, the Pharaohs turned over their payments to George Chapman. Since this was a Monday morning, the money would have still been in the cash box. In addition to this evidence, there was also a black silk stocking in the bedroom that had been used, presumably, as a mask. So, like the burglars where they wear the pantyhose over their head, that's
Right.
what they were thinking it was. And a similar mask was actually found downstairs, leading police to believe that there was more than one suspect. And when I say stocking mask, it's not actually what you're picturing. So the stockings at the time were actually wool and thick. So even though I had just said it's like those, it's not. It's more like a ski mask that they cut holes
Get to see.
in. So it still would have been like mushy the face and everything. If I don't know how to, I'm not explaining it well. It's fine.
You just see the eyes.
Right, but it's still going to be mushy because it's meant to stay on legs. So it's smaller than like a head
Yeah.
ski mask would be. So it'll be smushy face with your eyes cut out.
Squishy nose.
Yes. And the so it had been cut, it's a piece of cloth for the eye holes, and then there's actually like a string tied around it, like to keep them up, and it had the string missing. The cash box and tray were taken to Scotland Yard to be fingerprinted by Detective Inspector Charles Collins of Scotland Yard's Fingerprint Bureau, which was established in 1901. There was a print, and it was determined to be a thumbprint on the tray that did not belong to the Pharaohs because their prints were obviously available because they were there or available. I don't.
In
Dead,
custody.
yeah, dead people are accountable for. So police that were present also had their prints taken for an elimination sample, which is kind of crazy in the day that they were willing to do that. Again, we're in 1905. Now, the print either didn't match any of the. Okay, so it didn't match the couple, didn't match the police. They also had 80,000 plus sets on file because they have a nice little card catalog on it. Didn't match any of those either. So none of their known suspects. So the fingerprint was giving no leads. Police went searching for witnesses, and there was a witness, a milkman, Harry Jennings, and his assistant, who saw two men leaving the Pharaohs at 7:15 in the morning of the murders. The taller man was in a blue serge suit and a bowler hat. And the other man was in a dark brown suit, cap, and matching boots. Now, let's remember that people didn't have a lot of outfits in this era. It ain't like it is today. So this description was out there, and the public identified the men as Albert, who was 20, and Alfred, who was 22, Stratton. The police, they didn't have any record yet because even though they had done burglaries in the past, they'd never been caught. Now, Albert's landlady admitted that he requested an old pair of her stockings. Could have been a king. You never know. She said, no. Could have been a king. Now, when she was making his bed, however, she saw that he had hidden silk stockings between the mattress. Again, was this his king? Could have been. Now, Alfred's mistress, who had a black eye at the time of the interview, said that he was out the night of the murders. And the next day, he gave away his coat and shoes that he had been wearing the night before. Now, after a week of searching, police located Alfred in a pub. He stated that Albert went to sea, but that was determined to be a lie when he was found the next day at a lodging house.
Why'd she have a black eye?
I don't know. Because he's an abusive asshole. Because she asked him where he was the night before? Probably. No, it's just what the record said. She showed up with a black eye.
They're like, okay, it's normal.
Yes, I didn't think to look into that. But they were able to find Albert at a lodging house. So now they're both in custody at the Tower Bridge Police Station. And Detective Inspector Charles Collins, the founding member, as I said, of the Fingerprint Bureau, he rolled the prints of the brothers, and it was determined that the print on the cash box was from Alfred. It was from his thumb. Now, both brothers were officially arrested and charged with the double homicide. And during the trial, Chapman, the owner of the shop, was called to the stand, and he confirmed that the payment would have been around 12 to 13 pounds. So that would amount to, in today's money, just under 1,500 pounds. Double homicide for two people to split 1,500 pounds.
That's not a lot.
The entire case was solidified by the fingerprint evidence. And keep in mind, it was relatively new information to the jury, and they were in awe at what they did, because what they did is during the trial, they pulled a juror up and did the fingerprint demonstration, the comparison, and the collection technique on the juror themselves. So they were able to validate it to them because it's one of those plants in the audience, but it couldn't have been a plant because it was a juror. So either way, brothers were found guilty of homicides, sentenced to death, which was carried out May 23rd, 1905 by hanging. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
I told you it's depressing, but fingerprints. Go forensics. Hopefully that entertained you somewhat and informed you. Talk to you next time. Bye, y'all.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.